I have Cheryl joining me today from the team. And we also have, and why this is a very special edition of Talk Like a Viking is because we are going live. So hopefully some folks are out there tuning in and jumping into the chat and watching this as it happens and unfolds. So any awkward silence or swearing will not be edited out. Uh, those are on the YouTube side, please jump over to the Riverside if you have any questions because I am playing host and producer. So we'll not see any comments on that end, but hopefully we can, if there is stuff over there that's good to ask, we can just circle back to it hopefully at a later date. But the other reason why this is special, and that's because right now the USAT has selected their Olympic teams, and the Olympics are coming up. So why not come in and get some of the USA Triathlon folks on to chat about some of the issues, or what's not issues, but initiatives that we have coming up for the Olympics. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to you guys to introduce yourself. So, Scott, you want to go first and introduce yourself?
Sure. It should be, I guess, age before beauty or something like that. So my name is Scott Schnitzbahn. I'm the high performance general manager at USA Triathlon. I oversee all of the elite development programs for our Olympic and Paralympic side. So that's everything from obviously the selecting of our teams, which we just did on the Olympic side this week, and then all the way down through our talent ID and development programs as well, where we're looking for new talent or developing the talent coming through the junior ranks and on up through the elite program. So that's my day-to-day job. I also work very closely with Christy Marie because it is not inexpensive to run those programs and to shuttle athletes all over the world to these competitions and get them equipment and all the other support that they need. So we work really close together with our foundation, and it's a great partnership.
Christy, yeah.
All right. Scott's just my favorite. So he's one of the funnest parts of the job. My name is Christy Marie Butler, and I'm actually from Dallas, Texas, which is why I've got that pesky double name. I'm the Chief Development Officer of the foundation, and I oversee corporate partnerships as well. So I have truly the joy of being able to talk to our corporate community as well as our athletes and our donors about how they can make a significant impact on the sport. And what's so great about this is I'm never evangelizing. I've had a number of fundraising jobs where I needed to explain to people like, this is why you should care about this, and this is how you can make a difference. But when it comes to this sport, I'm only talking to people who already love the sport and have been touched in some way by the sport. So I get to talk about things like what Scott just said, that high performance does not pay for itself, that if we really want to own that global stage, we have got to invest in it at a significant level. And so it's just been, I've been here about 8 months, and it's been a lot of fun. And Cheryl's on my board, and so she's been one of the highlights as well.
Yeah, it's been a real pleasure to work with Christy Marie. She has a lot of passion. We're making her a triathlete. She's yes, she's a fabulous runner. I went up the incline with her, and she hopped up it in like 30 minutes. If you know about the incline, that's amazing. And her dog went too. It was really fun. Yeah, she's so I think the only thing that I have to say today is that, our triathlon community here in this area is very fortunate. So when, we need to support this sport. We love this sport. And I've had the opportunity to meet a lot of the high performance coaches and people on Scott's team. And I just have to tell you, these are really impressive human beings, and nobody is doing this to get rich. We need to support these people. It's such a cool thing. So, open your wallets and give. And Christy will explain how you can do that later today in this talk. But it's just really important because they do a lot of really good work.
Yeah, and that's I think for this episode, why we're chatting is, triathlon is huge here in Texas, specifically, the Woodlands, Houston area where our team is based. And one of the things I think we want to project into our community is, hey, what are these initiatives that are coming up? Like you said, it's not a cheap thing to do, and a lot of this, we need to bootstrap and get those folks to come out and support. Even if this is all going through USA Triathlon through Colorado, there's still a huge community throughout the United States. I know you guys are going out and talking with those communities, say, hey, point on the back, come out and help support these initiatives. So I guess with that, I'm gonna kind of point it back to you guys and say, what are those initiatives? And I think one of the things I heard from Cheryl is there's these things called like Pathway to Paris and all that. So what are those, or what is your involvement in that, and how do we get that message out to our communities?
Is that question for me or Scott?
Well,
I'll let you both discuss that.
I'm the money guy.
Yeah. I'll talk a little bit about what it is, and then maybe Christy Marie then can chime in about kind of how to get involved. So essentially, obviously, this is an Olympic and Paralympic year, and we're less than 50 days out now then from the opening ceremony in Paris.
Mhm.
And these games come up every 4 years, or in this case, 3. And we've got to get athletes ready for those games. And as we like to say, it's not every 4 years or 3, it's every day. So our athletes need a lot of support. A lot of that support comes from the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Committee. It comes from USA Triathlon, mainly through our foundation and the support that it gets there, and some other smaller sponsorships and grants. So the things that the athletes who are preparing now for the games, and our team obviously is set now on the Olympic side and nearly set on the Paralympic side. The qualification process for Paralympics, which take place a month after the Olympics, is still ongoing. So we're still trying to get a few more of those spots for athletes for the games, for the Paralympic Games. But basically, they need some updated equipment. They need training camps, nutrition products. I mean, all the things that any of us who do triathlon need, right? But in this case, we're trying not to scrimp on any of the things that they need. I mean, we want the best world-class equipment that they are competing on. We want them happy and healthy going into that. So there's a lot of sports med, sports psychology, massage, other kinds of services that they need going into that. And then there's the actual getting there. The U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Committee obviously supports getting them to the games themselves, but we also have a training camp that we're having in Vichy, France, leading up to the games that many of the athletes will take part in, just to get themselves on the right time zone and ready to compete there without, doing like we usually do, which is sort of like flying in a couple of days before the competition and then right out. In this case, we're trying to get to France a few weeks early and acclimate to that time zone and even do some heat prep and just really focus and be away from the day-to-day life distractions and get ready for that event. We had the camp there last year, actually, so the athletes are used to it and they're coming into kind of a home environment there when they do that. But that's expensive. And so we're having athletes there. Some of them are coming from altitude. So they actually have altitude rooms there that they can stay and sleep in. So we rent those from the French training center that we stay at. We feed them. They have training access in the pool and the gym and in the medical facility and everything there too. So all that stuff are things that we need to pay for. And we are unfortunately in a deficit spend kind of situation for the last few years where we're actually dipping into our savings to support the athletes. And as we're going into Olympic year, that's not ideal. So we're still looking for some funds through this Pathway to Paris where we can get interested people involved who are inspired to support these athletes and connect them with the athletes directly, and also provide that financial support then that they need for whatever those kind of last minute items are that are going to give them an edge in Paris. And so maybe Christy Marie, you can talk about like how people can do that.
Oh, all day long, Scott. What was so interesting to me when I first started here, was the timeline around triathlon. So the very first triathlon was held on Marshall Island in 1974. 1982 was when USA Triathlon was formed to be the national federation overseeing triathlon. We are the federation for triathlon, and we're the largest in the world. Then fast forward to, so the 80s and the 90s were really where the attention was drawn to what's going on with this sport. What I love about this very American sport was the idea of three incredibly challenging sports, so cycling, swimming, and running. And this started with cyclists and swimmers and runners arguing over which was harder, which I would have been so in that, by the way. I would have been so like, oh, running's like definitely it. And so they're like, well, instead of like just continuing to argue, they're like, let's put them all together. And so it feels like this was a conversation over beers, is how that feels. And so they do that.
Probably was.
That's right, it was. So then we really see it gain national and even worldwide attention over the 80s and 90s, and then 2000 was when it was first in the Olympics. We hit we were at our peak around 2015 was when we had the highest membership, and then in 2018, Scott, you might have to make sure I get this right. We actually, between the able-bodied Olympics and the Paralympics, we had the most medals for triathlon in 2018. Did I get that right? Or did I make that up?
At the last games in Tokyo, okay, which is actually 21 because of
21.
COVID.
Okay.
The 2020 games, we had the highest combined medal count between Paralympic and Olympic. So
that's right.
That was a high watermark for our high performance program for sure.
Yeah. So then going into 2024, what we're looking at is, and I always like to say this, that like the French are just objectively more beautiful people. And I can't help but just want to hear an English gentleman talk forever. But this is still our sport. Right now, those two countries have it. And so we really want it back. And the reason that they are leading is very much because of the funding. So I think that France is federally funded, and then GB is funded through the lottery. Well, we are primarily funded through philanthropy. And so they get about 3 times the dollars that we get, but we're still in the mix, even running running as lean as we do. So what we figured out is it's about $33,000 an athlete to be able to get them to the games. And so we've been running this program called Adopt an Athlete. And so if you want to be able to say like, hey, I helped bring somebody to the games, like this is an incredible way that you can help. And some of our clubs have been pooling their dollars. And so a club adopts an athlete. We have individuals who are just like, you know what, high performance is really what I care about. And we know that in high performance, there's 2 things about high performance. In any industry, high performance does not pay for itself. Like oftentimes high performance, that is the tip of the spear. Sometimes that's the research arm of something. Like NASA is a version of high performance in the United States. Like it never pays for itself, but it influences everything. Like we have iPhones because we put a man on the moon. And so we don't know what happens when we put an American on a podium. We don't know what kid sees that and says, okay, I actually think I want to try to run and swim and then bike and then run. Like we don't know the lives that get changed when the exposure of, wow, I'm inspired. Like inspiration changes lives. And that's why we're not just saying like selling, hey, like we want more medals on American chests, although we do. What we really are selling is the inspiration and the impact that happens when we see our guys and our gals with holding the American flag and we hear our anthem being played. It is unquantifiable, the impact that has. And it's only $33,000 an athlete.
Now, when you say $33,000, is that just their travel and where they're staying, and or does that include their food and their availability and like Scott, you're saying the massage and recovery, and I think it was the how they're sleeping, like the acclimation part of it. Is that all included in that?
Yeah, and I would say that it's customized for each athlete. So 33,000 is a nice round number that would apply on average, but some athletes need slightly more, some athletes need slightly less. And it's a combination of just whatever their life situation entails. We have some athletes on our team have children, They're managing part-time or even full-time jobs around this to make this work with their family. So maybe they need some extra childcare so they can get out the door in the middle of the afternoon and get their ride in. It might be someone whose bike needs an upgrade and they need a new bike. It might be, like you said, the massage, an extra massage a week. All those things are included in that. Obviously, like I talked about, the camp that we're having in France, we'd like to add a few more days onto that for some of the athletes who need to get over there a little bit earlier. So there's just a combination of different things. And I think that's what makes all the athletes on our team's stories so interesting, is that they're all so unique, especially on the Paralympic side in terms of how they came into the sport. Maybe if they were born with whatever it is that puts them in their competitive class, or that happened through an accident or an illness or something like that, and then how they need to accommodate that in their sport. Especially that equipment is very specialized because it's very much tailored to that individual athlete's needs. Not that the equipment on the Olympic side isn't tailored to their needs as well and customized, but obviously you can imagine it's a little bit different when you're trying to put your leg into a carbon fiber holder that's attached to your bike, so that you can time trial in the right position and get good leverage off that leg that you don't have, different maybe than just a simple bike fit for the on the Olympic side. So there's a lot of that those different kind of projects that we're managing, and so this support will help in all of those different ways. But we want to also create that connection between those who are adopting an athlete and the actual athlete that it adopts, because they are real people with great personalities, great stories, super inspirational. But we want to create those relationships so that you get to feel that like you're part of their team, when we're creating these adopt an athlete opportunities. And some of those so far have been really great to see people get to know each other, and what comes from that as well.
You get a bit invested in their journey per se,
Yeah,
is
for
when
sure.
when you're trying to help them raise, I guess, that approximate $33,000 to go over to Paris. But yeah, I know we as a community, Ironman Texas is in our backyard, and I know a lot of folks on our team do homestays, and it's a massive investment. And I recently had an athlete in my house here. And you're just immediately locked in and invested in their journey and how they're doing. And, next thing you know, you find yourself trying to see, ways you can help. And, you really there to provide the house. You're like, hey, I know this place to go. How do you do this? Or go here for a massage and all
Yeah.
that good stuff. So, yeah, I think it's a good opportunity, especially when you start hearing about these folks and their names and what they can do to truly help. And I think one of the things is, and I think you brought it up, and I don't want to overshadow that, is everyone always just thinks about the Standard Olympics, but the Paralympic side of it, and the stories and everything behind that, and just the extra, not that it's extra, but it's just, they have other things that they need to, look after and address just to, or as well to Paris to train and race. So it's good to hear that there's initiatives out there. And I guess, like you were saying, Chrissy, there's a way for clubs, and that's what we are here at Valhalla and Valkyrie, is we're a club. So I guess as a club, do we get involved? Is it just sending an email to you, or is it going to the USAT triathlon website and trying to figure out how to get involved in that? But how specifically would a person or a club reach out to USA Triathlon to help those folks?
Absolutely. Well, sending me an email is always a great way to get started. I'll definitely follow up with Cheryl with here's how you can help, that she can forward on to anyone if this club wants to be part of it specifically. Our website is quite robust, so you can visit that, but I do love me an email. So it's my name, Christy-Marie.Butler@usatriathlon.org. And then I will follow up with you on how you can help. But broadly, we have a number of ways to get engaged. So I always talk about Leadership Circle first. So Leadership Circle is 10,000 or more that goes to our 3 philanthropic priorities, which of course includes high performance. And the story that doesn't get told enough around high performance is how that goes all the way down to our youth. Like we start looking for top talent between 13 years and 15 years old. And that's really where we need to snag them. I probably am not saying this right, but I think we're just looking at this point, we kind of snag cross country runners and hope they can swim. But I know that, that Scott actually has a really strong talent ID program. And so I don't ever want to miss when we're talking about high performance, exactly how youth centric this is and how we want to go deeper in that talent ID and development arm. Then next we have more purely the grassroots versions of kids and youth. So how are we getting kids triathlons accessible to everyone? My daughter just did a triathlon with some aggressive encouragement from her mother. So she became a triathlete before I did. And that was so, I've just got to camp on this for a moment. There was a speech ahead of time by the race director where he said, triathlon is hard. Our kids are going to have a hard time finishing this. But what we're here to do is get them addicted to this sense of I didn't know I could, and then I did. Like that is really the core to me of what triathlon is, as someone who almost drowned last week. And like being like, I think I need to quit, clinging to the kayak, saying, is it okay if you could just like paddle me in? But like in all honesty, whatever it is, whether it is a doggy paddling to the finish line, or like what Chandler did, where I think he medaled in 5 events. You can go ahead and in the chat, Chandler, let me know exactly how many of those podiums you snagged, where you train day in and day out to be your very best. Yeah, 5 of 6 podiums. Well done.
Wow.
It's this idea of ordinary people doing extraordinary things and how we feel when we walk away from that, and to be able to bring that to our kids and bring that to our youth too. So how do we get this? How do we get clubs into middle schools and high schools so that it is more accessible? And how are we making it more accessible at the college level? So that grassroots kids and youth piece is the second philanthropic priority. And then the third really wraps around everything, which is how do we remove barriers to this sport? It is a very difficult sport to access, either logistically, like where are you going to find a race? How are you going to train in the pool? How do you get a coach? Can you afford a bike? There are so many areas of barriers that we need to be intentionally bringing down regularly. So those 3 areas are the philanthropic priorities. And when you invest in Leadership Circle, it goes to all 3 of those areas. Wherever our executive leadership team really needs to direct those funds, it gives them the flexibility to be able to do that. The next impact circle that we have, if 10,000 isn't quite at someone's level, is the 1982 Society, which commemorates the year USA Triathlon was founded, and it's $1,982 up to $9,999 that goes into our areas of greatest need. So broadly unrestricted, just toward how do we grow the sport, support our members, and support the sport. The another way, which is really fun, and I'll call out Chandler again because he is an ambassador, is be an ambassador. So champion the work, tell other people about the work, and then ambassadors each individually commit to raising $1,000. Although I'll call out our top ambassador right now is Dan Weiss, and he's at $21,000. He was raising money on the airplane to and from multi-sport. This is a really great way if you just love the sport and aren't in a space to make a large investment yourself, to be able to tell others about it is a huge impact. And then the final way I'll say is like just open doors. Like who can I talk to who can make a difference? I will meet with anyone and tell this story, and I drag Scott along as much as his schedule allows. So those are the main ways that you can really come alongside us to bring this sport to others in the meaningful way that it's, and have the impact that it's had on each of us.
Oh, that's good to know, because I didn't even know the 1982 Society that you were talking about. I had no idea that even existed, because I think one of the biggest challenges within USA Triathlon, and a lot of people are just getting into it, it's kind of like, oh, I just want to do this one and done, and I pay my 1-day fee. Or there's some of us in the office, right? Say I'm one of those folks too. I just pay my whatever in that year, and then the part of it is it's just something I have to sign up for because I have to have that number on my registration. So I think it's good to know, especially when the Olympic year and cycle comes around and suddenly our sport has a little bit more going on for it. Especially, I think this past year when you have other things, initiatives going on now with the PTO or T100 race series and the Ironman Pro Series, which is the big thing I would say for our area with having an Ironman in our backyard is, there's more to it than just those races. There's the USA Triathlon, there's the national events, there's the Olympics going on now. How as a community do we get more involved in not just that Ironman or that sprint down the road? How do we get involved in it as a national organization? So it's good to hear about things like that 1982 or
Mhm.
however you want to call it,
Yeah.
1982 society.
Yeah.
So I think that it's good to hear about those things and know that there's more than just paying my dues or my
Mhm.
1 day entry and about it the next day. So it's good to know. What else do I have?
Joe, I'll jump in here.
Yeah.
They have a lot of this information on their website. So just if people don't go to their website very often, they might just, go take a look at it. You can like their social media pages as well. One of the ways I got involved is I was involved in the very first fantasy camp that they put on. So I got to go stay at the Olympic Training Center. I got to train with some of the top coaches in the world. I got to meet, the people in the Olympic Training Center gym. I actually met Chandler there. And so I became an ambassador because I was involved in that. So they do those camps. I think they're in Chula Vista, California right now. There's, I think they're doing it at the beginning of the year now. But that supports, the all these initiatives as well. The fee that you pay to go to that camp, but what you get back in return. I mean, the things that I learned were invaluable to me, and so there's a lot of different ways that you can get involved. So if you love the sport, educating yourself through some of those things is a good way to know what's going on.
And it was also good to hear about moving those barriers and how do we get the youth involved. This isn't just the high performance 18 to 20 something year olds that are going for the Olympics right now or trying to turn pro. It's that we're looking at as a community, how do we get those kids involved? I know my son has definitely taken a particular interest in the sport of triathlon since he sees me do it since the day he was born. So he definitely has an interest in that. Granted, he kind of took a turn on me this past year and went the swimming route, but hey, there's still he's involved in the endurance sports. But if I say, hey, you want to do the sprint triathlon this summer, he's like, yeah, sure, sign me up, Dad, let's go for it. And then he's also telling me, hey, I'm gonna go do that Ironman race with you one day, and I'm gonna kick your butt. And I'm like, well, when that day comes, let's go for it. So it's good to hear that we're trying to remove those barriers and get those clubs involved too. And I know. I think Amy Quinn in our area has the Select Track group, and it's really opened up the doors for some of those kids to find that avenue as well. So I think I'm all for that with younger kids sitting here at home right now. I'm looking over to my shoulder because they're sitting on the couch home for the summer. So good to hear that we're trying to provide avenues through the USA Triathlon as well for those kids. With that, I mean, unless you guys have more you want to talk about on the pathway to Paris and how we get some more involvement, but I was thinking maybe we talk about a little bit of the USAT Foundation and what exactly that is and what that does.
Absolutely. So the foundation was started about 10 years ago by a group of really passionate volunteers that wanted to make sure they had a vehicle to champion the sport and then invest back in the sport. So it operated more like a Friends of Triathlon group than really a part of USAT specifically. So they raised money themselves. They're raising about $100,000 a year, grew to it at its peak under the volunteers about $200,000 a year that they would then grant out to clubs, to race directors would be, and coaches. Like they really wanted to invest very specifically into very grassroots work that was growing the sport. And there was a lot of fun that came around that. But about 5 years ago, USA Triathlon wanted to professionalize the foundation, and so it brought it more in line with USAT. And they hired their first executive director, who started putting in some cool programs like the ambassador program, like training camp. And then about 2.5 years ago, maybe almost 3 years ago now, they hired their first chief development officer and president of the foundation. And then as I came on board 8 months ago, we have fully integrated into USA Triathlon. So we operate, even though we are a separate 501c3, we operate in lockstep. So the only things that I am focused on raising money for are alongside the strategic plan and the long-term vision of USA Triathlon. And so the trajectory has been really cool. They went from raising $100,000 to $200,000 to $2 million. I want to say we ended last year about 3.7 million. And then I was just pulling numbers. And so like, these aren't public at all, so don't tell anybody. But as of May 14th, we're at $2 million that we've raised so far this year, most of that in cash. So
year to date.
Year to
That's
date.
year to date.
No, May 14th. I don't have year to date. I got as far as May 14th. And that is actually those dollars have interestingly landed very much in the kids and then collegiate programs so far. So that's been where some enthusiasm has been. So I don't know what the foundation's long-term trajectory is, but what I've done my entire career is I get handed relatively small foundations or foundations that are in one way or another positioned for growth. And I just take it as high as I can get it. So I like to say, I don't know that we're going to be the number one foundation in the NGB community, but I'd like to be in the top 3. But we'll see. It really always has to do with where the community's heart is at. So I'll just make a pitch on philanthropy broadly right now because it's my favorite. I know that many of us have heard the Mr. Rogers saying of like, in times of crisis, look for the helpers. And I love that saying because what I have experienced my entire career and throughout my life really has been the impulse to give that we each are bringing to the table, that people, even though we all have our own selves and families and careers and problems to think about, that when we pause, there's just something inside each of us that says, how am I moving the needle and how can I move the needle? But when I look at COVID and we see, and I was in healthcare during COVID, so I was on the front lines of seeing that crisis, the fear that came along with it, and then the absolute outpouring of generosity that was the response. So those were like, everybody became a helper during COVID. But what also happened is without fundraisers to help direct that impulse, we ended up with a bunch of like thousands of pizzas rotting in ERs all over the country because people wanted to help, but we actually didn't need food in the ERs. Like we did need things, but we needed other things. So that's where the role of the fundraiser comes in, is it's really about just helping guide this really organic place of generosity that we each have to those areas that make the most difference. So I say, when anyone asks me what I do, I say all day long, I talk to people who care about things that matter and show them how they can help. And that really is just the whole space that I get to live in all day long. So that is the state of the foundation so far. And I'll say there is one other thing that we're doing that we've never done before. And it really is, how do we come around high performance so that those of us who are just like training, just doing our thing, living our best lives, how do we get engaged in high performance? So for the first time, we put together a concierge package for people that we made as accessible as we possibly could for those who would want to go to the Olympics and be able to have a front row seat and really a very one of a kind triathlon experience in Paris. So we have like, you get to train with a high performance coach every day. You'll get to interact with athletes. You'll be able to see the event, go to the at the Team USA house. We're going to have, I think one night we got to have a dinner or a reception in the Eiffel Tower. So like, we've really tried to make it a very exquisite experience. And our first package is sold out. We have a few more spots left for the mixed relay, but really para is where we're really driving people to come, because I'm not sure if I can say this, Scott, but we're going to sweep in para. Scott gets nervous when I say, I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say. I don't know. I actually don't
You
know.
can go ahead and do that. Yeah.
Calling it out early.
But you can.
Okay. Well, I don't know anything, so you can just dismiss it to the fundraiser chattering. But the para team is all of our teams are incredible. But I'm really excited we really want to have as big a showing for our para teams as we have at the Olympics.
No, we want that home field advantage in Paris.
Exactly.
Yeah, get the good crowd support out there, and make it feel like it's a home event. Like it's gonna be in like 4 years in LA. So
that's right.
Great. So I guess with all that, so we have our USAT Foundation, we have the Pathway to Paris, and we've kind of talked about the initiatives here and now. So I guess trying to be a little bit more forward looking, since I just brought it up, is what's the plan over the next 4 years as we look forward to LA? Because I know there's a lot of, hey, we're and I think, and I may ask this a little bit later, is there's a current team that we've selected, but what's it looking like for development, or what's the plan for the development over the continue to grow the sport, or at least get the youth to come up through the system? What's that plan for our high performance team over the next 4 years going into LA? What's that look like? And I don't know if that's probably more of a Scott question.
Yeah, for sure. That's definitely right in my wheelhouse. So you brought up LA, and I think LA is really important, not only because it's a home games for us that we obviously want to do very well in, and so we're actively taking our top athletes forward as we go towards LA to make sure that they have everything that they need and can compete at the highest levels. And like Christy Marie talked about before, we get to hear our anthem on our home turf. That there's a whole another wave of athletes coming behind them. And when we hit LA, it's really not like the culmination of our athlete development programs, but it's actually like the launching point for them, because our races in Paris are going to take place at 8 a.m. over there, which is the middle of the night here, midnight in Colorado, 1 a.m. or so in Texas. So we want to make sure that we do well there, but it's not going to be seen as much as a home games in prime time in the U.S. So we're hoping to reach a lot of people to inspire them to take up the sport, or just to get more active, lead a healthier lifestyle, and maybe some of those become into our Olympic or Paralympic pathways. But really that LA games is what is going to be when the gasoline gets poured on that flame. And we hope to see our sport really explode, like it did going back, as Christine was talking about with Sydney, the Olympics in 2000. Our sport really took off because triathlon was the first event of the games. That was the first time triathlon was in the Olympics, and it was the first event. So it was, and it was, jumping off right outside the Opera House there, and in Sydney, and it was just really iconic. We want that same moment again now in our country, for our sport, on our shores, to get our kids involved in going into the sport forward, towards the Olympics into the 30s. So to do that, we have to make sure that we have all those funnels ready to go. And we have a number of different ways that we bring athletes into the sport. So obviously there's the participation as a youth. We want those kids out there smiling and living a happy lifestyle, and knowing that they can achieve something, and seeing themselves in a more confident way, that they can overcome adversity no matter what happens during a triathlon, which always something happens, right? So that's the biggest part of it, obviously. But out of that base of participants, then comes that kind of cream of the crop. So we have a national series of, we call them our development race series. So basically, as 13-year-olds, you can start racing in the draft legal format, just like the Olympic athletes do. It's a super sprint distance, so it's super fast and short, and it's skill based, and so that's where they can kind of get their taste of it. And you should see these kids, if you've never seen one of these races. They're 13 years old, and they're in the full elite tri kit with USA on the front and their name across, just like if you're going to Team USA or something, as an adult athlete with us. But these kids look more pro, I think, sometimes than our pros, and they've got the skills down in transition probably quicker than some of our athletes going to the Olympics. But, so that's a like first entry point where they can kind of get the taste of, wow, I can see myself on this pathway. Like the Olympics isn't just something I watch on TV. It's like something I'm actually a part of now as a 13, 14, 15-year-old. I'm doing the same format. I look the same. I'm overcoming the same challenges. They can start to relate to those athletes that they're seeing, hopefully on the Olympic podiums. But from there, so there's a series of races around the country that they can participate in, and the national championship as well. Once they hit 16 is when the 16 to 19 junior age group starts. And so those kids race a sprint distance. It's also draft legal. And they can go to world championships then. So there's no worlds for the 13 to 15-year-olds, but the 16 to 19-year-olds is the big world championship. So we send, there's a quota of 3, but we can sometimes qualify extra. So we typically send 4 males, 4 females to that world championship for the juniors. And if you look back through who's won the junior world championships over the year, it's a who's who of current elite athletes and former gold medalists and international stars, then who go on to long course as well and dominate there. And you can always trace that all the way back really to these junior ranks where they're getting their start. And not everybody who competes in the youth or junior draft legal stuff becomes an Olympian. Very, very few people become Olympians, but they become part of that movement. And so where does that lead them? Does that lead them to take up coaching and inspire a whole nother generation of people? Does it take them, to start a club or, pursue it in college and be part of their collegiate program? Or even now we have the NCAA program for women. So athletes can actually get scholarships and pursue a college education because of our sport. So there's a lot of avenues that people can take by being part of those 13 to 19-year-old programs. And obviously the best of the best then will go on to a professional career. They'll race in the under 23 group with World Triathlon, and then into the elite group where they start traveling around to the different cup races, Continental Cups, World Cups, and the World Triathlon Series. So that's sort of the pathway from youth all the way through to the Olympic Games. But we have other ways for athletes to find us, or better yet, us to find them as well. We have, I think most people are familiar if you follow Olympic triathlon. In the US, we started, years ago, we started the collegiate recruitment program. So basically we were looking for athletes who were great collegiate runners, also had a swim background, but they knew nothing about our sport. They thought it was, if they knew about it at all, it was Ironman and like something mom or dad does, but not something that was really for them as a 20-year-old athlete focusing on track and field. For them, the Olympics was the 10,000 meters or the 5,000 meters or the mile or whatever that might be. They didn't have this even knowledge that there was something for them that could exist past their collegiate career. And so almost all of our top athletes right now and most of our Olympic team came through this pathway of being identified as a college runner or swimmer, even with a good running background. And they were brought into the sport, taught the sport, and fast-tracked into it and have been super successful. The sport is getting younger, though. If we look around the world, especially at our GB and French counterparts, they're succeeding earlier and earlier on the international stage. So we're also not wanting to give up that 4-year cycle. So we're actually starting now looking at high school athletes and trying to find that same sort of caliber of swimmer runner who, again, doesn't know about our sport, and we can bring them in and educate them about it. Not necessarily to go full-time triathlon as a 18-year-old kid, but if they're going to college and they're running on a scholarship or something, they're just in touch with us. They're coming to a summer camp where they're getting those skills and they're getting connected with others their age and those peers who can support them in that. And so that transition, pun intended, is really quick. So when they're done with their college years, they're not just now finding and being introduced to the sport. They've been doing it for 3 or 4 years throughout college, and they can just step right into an international race right off the track from college or cross country course. So that's our high school and collegiate recruitment program. We do the same things on the Paralympic side as well, where we're looking for that talent. Maybe they're even crossing over sports. Like One of our top wheelchair athletes is also a top Olympic skier as well, and wins gold medals over there. And she competes for us in triathlon in the summer times. So there's opportunities there. We're looking for people maybe who were athletes before at a high level, but then had an accident or an injury of some sort. And now we're giving them the opportunity to continue their competitive pathway in our sport, which enhances their life and hopefully enhances our medal count. So there's a number of ways that we're trying to find and develop athletes through our system. But like Kristen Marie said, like building that youth base and then getting them involved where they have the opportunity with a local team or a coach who can help them through that sort of elite pathway. And I hate to use that term for kids who are 13, 14, 15 years old, but at least that just means like our pathway of high performance, right? Which is like the draft legal style, the high speed, fast transitions, draft legal racing that's so exciting to watch, but also to participate in as well. So that's sort of the overview of everything that high performance does. And I'm happy to answer any other questions or go through it in more detail if you'd like to dig into some of those areas as well.
Scott, what specifically is Project Podium in everything you just talked about?
Yeah, great question. So Project Podium, I mentioned the NCAA program that we have for women. That's under the emerging sport category in the NCAA, which is designed to help universities meet the Title IX requirements by getting more women involved in sport and providing more opportunities that way. So we're very close to achieving full NCAA status on the women's side, but we don't have a men's program on the NCAA side. So a few years back, we started this program to be able to offer college scholarships and a training environment for the top college-age men, and that's what Project Podium is. They train primarily out of Arizona State University, and they have access to all of their facilities there in terms of the track and the pool and the weight room and everything there. They're supported by our dollars, though, in terms of like how they're coached, how they travel, the equipment that they get, all that kind of stuff. So and their scholarships as well. We actually pay for those, and almost all of that program is covered by philanthropy. And we're looking to, we've actually doubled the size of that program due to some generous gifts that we've received. And we're actually looking to expand that program even further, and potentially even adding a women's version of that too, that is on top of the NCAA program. The NCAA program is awesome, and it's focused primarily on winning NCAA championships and providing that collegiate experience, not necessarily on what comes next. So we're also looking at the possibility of developing a women's version of Project Podium that would allow them to focus on the elite side of the professional side of the sport as they're coming through and out of the NCAA program, so that hopefully they can go from standing on NCAA podiums to standing on international world triathlon and hopefully Olympic Games podiums as well. But we can't do that unless we have the funding for it. So that's why it's a thought now and not an actual program yet, because we have to figure out a way to pay for that. And that's going to be obviously a lot of philanthropy. So
it's been really interesting to see how when we bring together education, so helping kids support their education, and triathlon, how the floodgates have opened with this. So it's been really like we've had a significant investment in getting us over the NCAA championship hurdle. So right now we're an emerging sport, and we need 40 active programs throughout a 2-year period of an NCAA assessment, which will start in November, to become a championship sport. And we've had a major donor say, like, I want to make sure you guys don't just limp across the finish line, you roar across the finish line as a championship sport. And then Project Podium is that other place where we've brought together the scholarship piece along with the training piece, and it makes sense. Like between sport and education, like that is how you transform lives.
Sure, I didn't realize there wasn't a men's championship program. I didn't know that.
Yeah, and it's pretty successful, I would say. If you look at the results that the athletes in that program have achieved over the last few years, the trajectory is like this. So in answer to your question, Joe, about like what are we doing for the team for 28, like what's behind this current group of athletes, these guys at the Junior Worlds last year went 3 in the top 8, which no other country has done more than one time. I think GB did it a few years back, but so putting 3 athletes right there, sniffing the podium, really shows the depth that group has. And those kids now are racing into the U23 category as well. And I think this year's Worlds, not just the kids in that program, but we have a couple other athletes as well that are competing at World Cups now and doing really well there, who are still in that U23 age range. And so that, we've had such a wealth of female athletes come through the collegiate recruitment program and have success, but we haven't quite gotten there on the men's side. That's been a little more bleak. And this crop of kids coming through, combined with like Morgan and Matt and the other athletes we still have on the top end that are going to continue through to the next games, I think it's going to be really awesome to watch these young guys push the veterans as we go to LA and then on from there. On the women's side, we've got some athletes who are going to be transitioning out of the sport, or at least out of the Olympic version of the sport here after these games. We have some that'll probably retire completely. And we have a few who are obviously at the top of the sport and they're going to continue on. But I think our women's side is lacking a little bit more. If you just look in the rankings right now, we have a little bit of a gap behind our top athletes. We've got, it seems like I think we have 8 women in the top 30 right now in the world, which is awesome. But then the next ranked athletes like in the 200s. So that's why we're talking about potentially a Project Podium program for the women to take the top NCAA and top junior athletes and really give them a high performance environment where they can then thrive on the international stage as well. And there we have, I think it's at last count, I think it's just over 40 athletes that we've identified who we use a color coding system. And basically like they're sort of, yellow or green or even dark green is like they're already running at a world-class level and their swim times are competitive there as well. And if we can just teach them the sport, they're going to immediately have an impact on the international stage. Mm-hmm. And so it's just, those are athletes I was mentioning before, kind of like they're in high school or they're in college and they're sort of dabbling in our sport as we keep in touch with them and keep bringing them into camps and upskilling them so that they can make a quick transition. So it may seem like there's this like sort of black hole behind our current crop of really talented women, but there's just like this huge groundswell coming behind them. Whether or not any of them will get through for LA, hard to say, but I'm really excited about our development pipeline going forward and helping those athletes. And that's where, again, going back to philanthropy, that's where we really need the help is taking them. We've had a grant, the Mallows gave us an awesome gift to support our junior and U23 national team. And now we have this sort of gap between when they exit out of U23s into that elite stage, like helping them make that transition over because that's a big jump. Even then from the continental level then to the World Cup level is like a whole nother jump. So supporting athletes until they can get to the national team is a challenge right now that we're trying to overcome as well. And we have a lot of athletes that will be in that situation probably in the next 2 years' time. So being ready to take them in is super important as well.
So essentially you're saying like you're very much aware of this new crop that may be coming up, even though it may not be on that ranking level yet, but you're aware of them and it's just trying to market to them that this is an avenue that you can pursue to kind of make your way up into the national rankings to potentially compete at the LA Olympics, correct?
Yeah. I mean, you look at how fast some of the collegiate recruitment program women have come into the sport. I mean, Gwen Jorgensen was at the Olympics in London like 2.5 years after she did her first triathlon. So like it can happen super fast when they have that level of talent. And, when they're a dark green level of talent, like they just need the support to get there. And so we just need to be ready when they're ready to take that next step. And the USOPC provides a lot of great support for our athletes when they're at that top level, like they're actually getting podiums at the highest level races. But that's when their support kicks in. So our support from USA Triathlon and through our philanthropic programs is really what supports that whole grassroots pipeline, from just providing races for the kids to do at age 13 when they put on their tri-kit with their name on the front, all the way up to sort of taking that last step up to the podium from sort of those U23 or NCAA ranks or Project Podium kind of setup.
Yeah, those 13-year-olds with more pro kits than the actual pros.
And so whenever I hear Scott talk about the way that they identify talent, it kind of hurts my feelings. No one's ever said I'm a dark green.
Can't say I've heard
We had
that.
this program, a few years ago when you were still in college. Then you would have definitely been a dark green CM.
I don't think so. Thanks. I'm going to call my college coach and tell him you said that.
Yeah.
You're bright pink with sprinkles.
Thanks. Yes.
Well, so we really just wanted to, sort of educate our team on the fact that USAT is so much more than the one-day insurance that you pay for when you sign up for a triathlon. I mean, so much going on at USAT Triathlon, and this is so exciting, and there's so much that we need to support. So I think CM threw down the gauntlet. So we need to put our team together. There's other teams out there raising $33,000, and Raise Like a Viking needs to raise $33,000.
Yeah, and you can support more than one athlete. I mean, you don't have to just adopt one. You can adopt, multiples.
We have a girls team and a boys team. We're Valhalla and Valhalla. We could compete against each other, but there's like twice as many boys. So
I could tell a quick story of a donor I was talking to a few weeks ago that one of our athletes actually brought in, and he said that he had galvanized his community. And they pulled together about $35,000 that all came in. And he's from North Carolina. And I have been practicing my North Carolinian accent to see if I could say what he said. But because I was asking, was like, how did you raise this money so quickly? And he was like, I'll tell you, Krista Marie, all I had to do is say that our hometown boy is trying to run down a Frenchman, and all he needs is a better bike. But he said his was better. So I'm just telling you guys, like, I hope that when a big takeaway here, I love how you said it, Cheryl, like we're more than the little box you have to check on when you're registering for a race. But when you hear what I love about presenting with Scott is that everyone walks away feeling very confident that the high performance team is under exceptional leadership and we have the right pieces, but we do need some help because it is our sport. And I don't know about you, but I'd like it back.
100%.
Yeah. And, this is a sport that you can do for over a lifetime. I mean, granted, there's a lot of ground to pound with running and all that, but you can continue to participate when you're 60, 70, 80 years old. You see those, those age groups pop up at local races. So it's not just something that you do, as a youth and then you're done. It's not like, say for instance football where you can only play that for so long and then you're done with it. This is something you can play like golf and tennis. Is something that you can carry on and continue to do as you get older and older. So I think it's you're not just presenting it to the youth, you're kind of presenting a lifetime sport of health and fitness, and it's a long-term thing that you can do with your life. And I know personally it's something that I've done for many years now, that it's not just about the race. It's about the community. It's about our club. It's about at least trying to stay healthy and fit and find excuses to eat all the unhealthy food at times. But, it's something I can continue to do and have fun with my life. So it's not just, I know we're talking about Olympics and all that, and those young, fast guys that are out there and gals and para athletes, but, something we can do for a lifetime. And if you go to our group and say, hey, our U.S. athletes need some support running down these French and guys, they're going to be like, all right, how do I throw in a few bucks? All right. Any other questions? Cheryl, you got anything else?
I don't. I think, Sam, we just need a link to know where we can donate. So if you want to give that to me,
Yep.
I will get that on our social media channels. And we just like to thank you for your time, Scott. You got a big job, and we all appreciate you. And we're rooting for you and looking forward to, I wish I could go to Paris. I can't. I'm going to Roth.
Oh.
All my money's gone.
And what I'll do, okay, I'll send you a link and I'll just put the guidance of like put on the like in honor of on the website, your club. So then I can keep track of like what the club raised.
Yeah, definitely. That'll be great. And then we can have a little, like update with our team, like, hey, here's our pathway to Paris type donation. Let's keep.
Yep. Yeah, because I'll send the high performance link, so we'll keep us focused.
Perfect.
Awesome. This was so much fun. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you, Cheryl.
Thanks for all your support and thanks for letting us tell the story a little bit. I think sometimes we, we're so narrow in our focus that sometimes I think a lot of people only know what we're doing when we go to the Olympics every 4 years. So just been great to talk about what we do and how we're working with the youth to bring them all the way through. And hopefully we can make everyone proud in July and August this year and September 1st and 2nd for the Paris.
Definitely. All right. Well, with that,
proud. 100%. Well, thank you for your time.
Yeah, with that, I'll close it out and say thank you very much, and hope you guys have a great day and appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.